Wes Goldberg, we've got a jam-packed September 19th just basketball show. We've got W expansion, Woj retired. We've got some role players we're going to highlight ahead of next season, the role players that could shape the 2024-25 season and have an impact on the title race. But I got to ask you first, very silly question for us to start. We got a leak of all the city jerseys that came out. I don't know if you've had much of a chance to look at these, but
I
you
have.
do a quick. Okay, good. We're in the same boat. We have Kismet energy here, just looking at these way too long. Which ones do you like? I want to be.
There's only
positive
one.
here. There's only one that you like.
There's
I have
only
like
one
4.
good one.
Okay.
You're wrong. There's only one good one. It's the Toronto Raptors.
Okay.
It's the only good one. It's first of all, they brought back the Raptor.
Yeah.
It's the original colors with the purple and the red and some black. And the Raptor, it's not just any Raptor. The Raptor is doing the Vince Carter dunk on the jersey. When we talk about a City Edition jersey, that's what we're talking about, people. That's creativity. That's an homage to the history of the franchise. It's not, hey, let's just use this alternative color that is not in our color palette, Boston Celtics, and just put it on the front of the jersey in some clean font that we wish we could use, but we can't. That some like marketing schmuck dreamed up with a clean font. And it's like, and now we have like this super cool, clean jersey that we wish we had, but we can't. No, get rid of that. It's awful. I will say this: the new Toronto Raptors jersey, the regular one, like the regular Raptors jersey, looks like a lousy, like marketing inspired, groupthink inspired, focus group inspired jersey. Like that's what the new one looks like. The old one was way better, but they did it right. They brought back the old stuff. They did an homage to the history of the franchise. That's creativity. That's thinking out of the box. It's originality. It's what the fans want. Good job on the Toronto Raptors. Bad job on the next 29 NBA teams because the rest of them suck.
Okay. I'm not as hard on them as you. I think the Raptors one is the best one, and it's not close. Like that is number one with a bullet. I would like to get I don't know what player I would get, but that feels like a jersey to buy at some point. Like
the problem with the Raptors now is there's no jersey that you would want.
By getting a Grady Dick jersey, I don't know.
Yes, actually, that's the answer.
That's the answer.
Because that's evergreen.
If I was 22, would be a much easier purchase. At
my 30s, at that point, it doesn't matter who the player is. Like 20 years from now, you'll have that jersey with Dick being written on the back. It doesn't like nobody's going to ask you who the player was. They're going to assume that it's custom.
Look, and explaining why I'm wearing that as like a cutoff at the gym in my 50s is it just feels insane. It feels insane in my 30s, so I'm not sure about that. Here are the other ones that I do like. I like the Jazz one. Give me any Jazz Mountains adjacent jersey.
So I hear you on the Jazz. It's the one that I sort of like. The problem I have with that one, unless there's something I'm missing, is it's just a throwback jersey, essentially.
I just don't care. Like considering how bad I think Nike does at a lot of the jersey designs, I will take them just doing a throwback. I don't care. Like
the throwback is fine, but that's a separate thing. We have another place. Sure. On the calendar for throwback jerseys, like you're allowed a throwback. You're allowed your 3 standard year-to-year rotation jerseys, your throwback jersey, and then the City Edition jersey. So the Utah's going to have 2 of these throwback jerseys, or none of these, or they're just always going to. I don't know. I'm a little confused by it. The jersey itself, however, is good. I will grant you that. I just had some issues with the whole process of it all.
I feel like you're going to feel similarly about the Magic one. I think the Magic one is also like a nostalgia play, but I just like the pinstripey look. I like the kind of over-the-top Magic. I think that just works.
But it looks black and white, doesn't it?
Yeah, some of these I do think they will come out looking a little bit different when we see non-leaked versions, like when we see like the high-res, see them on the court. I do think there's like some of these I'm just like buying stock in.
The Magic one would be awesome. My only issue, it feels like it's close to being good.
Yeah.
Like the Magic logo, like the Magic wording itself looks really close to a San Antonio Spurs logo, like word mark. And I think it's black and white, and I don't know why the Magic keep doing this. Remember those weird alternative jerseys they had a couple years ago with like the orange and the gray, and it was awful.
Abysmal. Yeah.
Why are the Magic trying to make like a black part of their color spectrum? Like it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why they're trying this blackout grayscale thing. Like get rid of it. you have great colors, as are. Let
Yeah.
them be. This would have been way better in just like the blue hues and all that kind of stuff.
I'll just say last two I'll shout out here. One good, one bad. I kind of like the Spurs one. I'm not totally sold on it, but I like its simplicity. I like the colors. I like the font. I'm just a fan of anything kind of Western-y, Texan-y. I just like the look of that. The worst one is the Boston Celtics. I'm just like, what are we doing here?
Awful.
The Boston Celtics have a distinct green. And anytime you say we're going to use a different green for the Boston Celtics, I'm not even a Celtics fan. But I'm offended. Like, I'm offended by this. This is abysmal. This is like Temu created a jersey for the NBA. That's what this feels like.
All right, how much time do we have here? All right, we're already kind of pressing up on the cold open question, but this is going to be worth it. All right, I'm going to do a whole bit here.
Yeah.
It's going to be Michael Scott from The Office roasted, and I'm going to do it for each one of these City Edition jerseys. So I'm going to do 30 of them in like 2 minutes. Can I do it? Do I have your blessing?
Yes. Wes.
All right.
Yes. Wes,
Dan Hawks, what do you think? You're near a lake? What's with the blue?
Wes,
roasted.
1 second. 1 sec. I think we should clip this, but I can't tell if it's me or if it's you that's causing you to be a little bit blurry and out of sync. I'm going to refresh. You should refresh as well, and I think we'll be fine. But I'm going to hit pause. And
Let's
we'll just
do it now.
1.
All right, Atlanta Hawks, you're up first. What's with the blue? What's with this like ocean water stuff? Like, what do you think? You have lakes? You're by the water? I don't know what you're trying to do here, Hawks. Roasted. Brooklyn Nets. Nobody's ever known what you're doing with like this graffiti thing. This looks like Play-Doh gone wrong. Roasted. Charlotte Hornets. Kind of like that one actually. It's throwback a little bit. But what are you gonna do? Put a LaMelo Ball in that? Roasted. The Chicago Bulls. What is this? I cannot wait for you to tell me that this like kind of bird poop gold color is something to do with the Chicago flag or some crap like that. Roasted. Boston Celtics. This is the worst jersey I've ever seen in my life, but because of your Boston media propaganda machine, this thing's going to win Defensive Player of the Year somehow. Roasted. The land. What is this?
Okay,
is this the Raptors?
That is a Bone Thugs and Harmony reference that LeBron co-opted when he was here, and thus it is just part of the Cavs iconography. Now,
Cleveland, the land. Yeah. I should have known that.
Yeah. But the light blue, I don't really know where that's coming. It's a Metro Parks thing, I think. They did this
I understand that it's a city edition. It's meant for the city. I understand that. But if I don't understand, like, if the rest of the world doesn't get it, then it's not that important to your city. Roasted. Detroit Pistons, like, you made this out of clay? Like, what is this? Like, the logo doesn't make any. The logo also looks like a ripoff of the old Raptors font. I don't. Roasted. Indy. This is like a worse version of what Brooklyn's trying to do. Roasted. The Dallas Mavericks. Nobody's ever thought about grayscale. Roasted. Golden State, this is going to be some Year of the Dragon, another kind of way to try to get the Asian population to love you. It's just bold-faced marketing, no creativity whatsoever. Roasted. H-Town, fine. Roasted. That's lame. This Clippers jersey is almost as bad as the rest of theirs. Roasted. I have no freaking clue what this 5280 is. Is this the Denver Nuggets? Is this that Mile High thing?
That's Mile High. That's the amount of feet in a mile.
And so I see that there's like a little mountain in the numbers. There's like this like pulsating color thing going on the sides. Again, not using any of the colors that we associate with the Denver Nuggets. If I can't tell what it is, nobody can. Nobody's going to wear this stupid thing. Roasted. Lake Show, black to purple gradient. Try for once doing something cool, Lakers. Roasted. Memphis in red. Why? Roasted. Minnesota, this looks like a screensaver just left on your desktop. Roasted. Heat culture, really? A red one of the black one yesterday or last season? Is this your practice jersey? Should we just grab these on the way to flag football practice? Roasted.
They killed Miami Vice, and I just don't understand why they didn't just keep doing Miami Vice in perpetuity.
New York Knicks, looks like you turned this in because you forgot to do your homework in the last minute. Roasted. Magic, talked about it. Roasted. Sixers with the thing on the side that has something to do with the flag or whatever. It looks like the same one that you've had the last 6 years. Roasted. Milwaukee Bucks. It looks like you just changed the order of your jersey last year, like just the same stuff in different places. Roasted. Toronto Raptors, God bless you. The Washington Wizards, you traded for Jordan Poole. Roasted.
And there we are. All right, on today's show, WNBA expansion. Woj retired. We'll probably reference these bad jerseys again at some point because I feel like I'm just going to be tempted to with some of the players we're going to talk about today. And role players that are going to define, or at least help define, the championship race this upcoming NBA season. That's coming up today on the Just Basketball Show.
Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. Oh, LeBron James with no regard for human life.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Just Basketball Show for September 19th. I'm Khris Manning. That is Wes Goldberg. You can follow, rate, review on your podcast app platform of choice. Hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel. And check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and X. Want to tell you about today's sponsor as well, BetMGM. Support for today's show comes from BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code JustBasketball. You get up to a $1,500 first bet offer in your first wager with BetMGM. Here is how it works. Step 1. Download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using code JustBasketball. Step 2, deposit at least $10 American and place your first wager in any game. Step 3, you receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply. Wes, we have to start with WNBA expansion. We have 2 news stories hit today. This and Woj will go chronological order of how these came out. WNBA is heading to Portland. This was a market the WNBA had looked at going to before this. It got pushed off. They're starting in with Golden State in Oakland and San Francisco next season, excuse me. And then the year after, Toronto and Portland come in 2026. In 2026, there will be an expansion draft, which is going to be really interesting. I love an expansion draft. And we also have Kathy Engelbert saying that Philly, Denver, Nashville, and the South Florida region, TBD and what city that could be or where that could go, are in discussions for the next expansion team, which she says on track to be no later than 2028 for Team 16 in the league, which would feel like would be the cap for at least the short to medium term future for the WNBA. Wes, do you like Portland as a market? And what do you have thoughts about where they're going to go from here? Do you have any takes coming out of this?
Yeah, I'm happy for Portland. At least they'll be able to watch good basketball finally. But sorry, that wasn't fair.
They're like the trouble is that they're like if I was them, like the winners here is Golden State or what the Valkyries. They are gonna get into the 2025 draft, and that's like a dub to get. Like maybe you're the team that gets Paige Beckers, and if you're waiting a year, I'm not. I can't say I've looked so far ahead at the 2026 WNBA draft, but like 2025 has the potential to just be loaded, and if you look at 2026, that's like probably a year before Juju comes out. So is there a big prize in that draft in the same way? I think like that's the toughest part if you're Portland that you couldn't get in for 25 and instead of going to 26. But I hear you on the good.
Sure, no, but it's a win for Portland. I'm glad that we've got more expansion. It's good that it's happening in the Pacific Northwest, which tends to be not the area that leagues expand to. But these days, now it's always LA or Las Vegas or something like that. So it's a great move for Portland. It's great for that city. I think they'll embrace it. Yeah, that's my take.
I like the Portland idea. I like that it fits in with a pretty robust women's sports culture there, with the Thorns doing very well there. Like this feels like in terms of a market you could go to. I when I've talked to people in the Cleveland area about this, for instance, they've always cited Columbus as a city that would be a better fit for the WNBA just because it has a more robust LGBTQ population. It is just a more like liberal-leaning city in that way, and I this does just play into some of this, that you do need a certain demographic. I am curious that, like, I feel like when we get to the end of this, West, and the expansion is done, whether it's I look at Denver, Philly, and Nashville as well, but like I think about Philly and Denver and South Florida as like 3 places I think that make a ton of sense. And there's going to be 1 or 2 markets, and maybe this comes down to who has the best financial offer, which probably matters more than anything else. But I do think that there's going to be good markets left, which is not a bad place to be if you're kind of scouting out for the future as this continues to scale. And I do think
there's plenty of good markets left. But
yeah.
Philadelphia makes sense to me just because of the size of the market. That's easily biggest market out of that group.
And
The mayor
maybe they
of
get in with
Philadelphia.
the Sixers expansion thing where they might or relocation where they might put
Yeah.
the arena in New Jersey, which you can have feelings about.
No, I
but
mean they
maybe
just
there's room
they
for there.
they just announced in Philadelphia that they're have an agreement. The mayor just announced an agreement with Center City. So basically, Philadelphia, the Sixers are getting the arena that they wanted.
Okay,
So
good.
maybe part of that can coincide with maybe a WNBA franchise, maybe not right away within the announcement and everything like that, but at some point. Nashville is bachelorette party central. I don't know if going to a WNBA game would be part of bachelorette activities. But the arena, I was thinking about this the other day. I was in Nashville like a month or so ago, and where the Predators play, the hockey team, is right on the main street there, Broadway. It's right there.
Yeah.
It's in walking distance. It's like that. There's like a Shake Shack, and then there's all the bars and restaurants. I'm like, only a hockey team plays there? That's insane to me. Like something like they should have a basketball team, and so putting a WNBA team there would be perfect. I think that's a great location. And then South Florida, it's interesting that this was worded South Florida and not Miami. And I think that's probably the right move. South Florida could be Broward County. And so that's where the Florida Panthers play. So maybe there's obviously the arena there. Maybe they could share an arena with the Florida Panthers, who have not shared an arena with anybody, but obviously has tons of inventory available. That would make some sense. Or obviously you could just play it. You could also do it in Miami because the Heat have an arena here.
Real curious about all of this. Very fascinating to see where they go from here. But this is big news. This is important. And again, I love an expansion draft. I just can't wait to just see what that's going to look like and what chaos comes out of expansion drafts. I think they're one of the things we don't get a lot in sports because the expansion doesn't happen all the time. But just interesting to see how the mechanics of all of that work. Let's get into Woj. Woj is retiring. Had 3 years per reporting left on his ESPN contract. He's going to go be the general manager of St. Bonaventure's alma mater. And Wes, I want to start with the human side of this because I found the way that Woj framed his own retirement from media into a job that I'm sure will have its stresses and require long hours at times, but he's going to focus on something that feels like it's going to energize him and probably offers more of a work-life balance. His job is one of those jobs that it's like you're on the phone all day. You constantly need to be aware and plugged in. I'm not sure vacation can really exist, in that job. This feels just like a guy who did everything he could, hit the pinnacle of the sports media industry in a lot of ways for his lane, and is saying, I want something more, a life that's a little more normal as I'm, in my 50s and can still make good money doing other stuff and can probably spend more time with my family and stuff like that. Just feels like a very healthy approach when we don't really see in sports media. Like I can't think quite of a retirement from sports media like this that is A, at this age, and B, in someone that is his departure, a month before the NBA season will change the way we consume information, but I can't help but applaud him for making like a very human decision to just go live a more normal life, it seems.
Adrian Wojnarowski's job, I think, might have been the most stressful job in the world, and I include president on that list. Like, that guy was up 24/7, 365, breaking news, and it wasn't like he was the only one. He had to do it right away. Every time his phone buzzed, he had to look at it. Like, the president gets the golf. Adrian Wojnarowski didn't get the golf.
Even more
golf.
so depending on who you are,
Yeah. And so I'm like surprised it took him this long, right? And that's in 2022, he signed a contract that paid him $7 million a year. Maybe that's why he stuck around as long as he did, because he's fine now. The idea, though, that he's downshifting and spending more personal time on the things that matter to him, as he put it in his farewell letter, I do find that kind of funny because he's going into college sports in the NIL world. Which is the same world that pushed Nick Saban away from Alabama. It has forced Coach K into retirement. And he's like, the thing that forced out some of the greatest coaches we ever did it because it was too much for them to handle, that's me downshifting. That's the world Adrian Wojnarowski is coming from. That is insane. He is an insane person. And I don't even mean that in a derogatory way. The guy is insane. He'd probably be the first one to tell you, yeah, I'm a little insane. And this is what he's trying to do, is he's trying to build up St. Bonaventure into a legitimate program. And that is not going to be easy. And he's going to have to deal with all the NIL. And by the way, his connections throughout the NBA and all those things will 100% be an amazing resource for him to use. Heck, he could probably pay out some of these NIL things with the money he's made at ESPN over the last few years. But he'll be fine. But this is not downshifting, right? This is him just shifting.
Yeah, I think it's downshifting to some degree because I can't I can't imagine even if it's just like he feels more passion for this, and we don't know like exactly, right? Like he isn't like
He probably
done
in this moment he probably does feel more excited about doing this than another year of tweeting trades 30 seconds before they're announced by the teams.
Yeah. It's also just like St. Bonaventure's not going to be Alabama football or Duke basketball. You know, like even if there was a building stressful part of it, it's not at the scale where like you're going to have the donors, you know, blowing up your front all the time, which I
hear you on that.
Something appealing about
I
that.
hear you on that. You're absolutely right. People like Woj don't get to where they've gotten to because they're just like, hey, I'm not at Alabama, so it's not as much pressure. No, he's the guy that like builds it from the ground up, being like, we're going to be Alabama, right? Like this guy he is Machiavellian. He is competitive. Like this guy, it's not an accident that he became the biggest name in the NBA. Which, like, besides, like, LeBron James and Steph Curry. Like, if you polled most NBA fans or even, like, a casual fan, it's like, name 3 people associated with the NBA. First one would be LeBron. Second one would be Steph. Third one might be Woj.
Yeah. Well, this brings me, I think, to the big point here is, like, I just think no matter what, no matter where this goes, and it did right before we came on, listen to the press box do a like a emergency reaction pod to Woj's retiring.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Brian
Okay.
Curtis and David Shoemaker. Very good show. We recommend if people want the media perspective on this. That's a good 40 minutes of your time well spent. They will cover like the big media picture, I think, better than like, you know, anyone really could. That's what they do. But I think from like if I'm thinking about like basketball fan consuming news, it's like how you get news now will be forever changed. It just will be different. You know, I think you'll see, like, I think you could see Wes like a pivot back to seeing more stuff embedded in columns, local beat guys getting scoops. You know, obviously, Shams feels like such a big kind of wild card in all of this now from that perspective. But it's like a Jake Fisher, I think, has more room now. Chris Haynes, Windy, the God, has where you don't have in front of me. Next time we record, Wes, I will be pulling the Windy bobblehead out that I got over the weekend, and we'll be showing that. But like we are going to be in a different media landscape where I do think how like we learn about things in the NBA is going to trickle out differently now, and ESPN as a result is going to look different. Like I think just this is like the one person in sports media that if you take him out of the ecosystem, it changes. I think everything. Like if Schefter left the NFL tomorrow, we'd miss some stuff, but it wouldn't be quite this drastic or feel this drastic.
No, because even Schefter shares news. I shouldn't say share. The market split for Schefter, it's not 100% Schefter. He's probably at like 60%. You got Daniel Jeremiah over here doing things, and you know other guys doing things. You do have local people breaking major news stories all the time of a national scope. Not like in the NBA where like Woj will just let like the local beat guy take the two-way contract news. Like he doesn't care about that. That fish is too small. No, Wojnarowski is close to 100%, right? Even whatever Shams has, Woj has it first or second. So maybe we call it like a 98% market share on news. And the other thing too, and because I think a lot of people would hear what you're saying, Chris, and just be like, that's a little bit of an overreaction. Like, what are you talking about? We still have Shams, we still have Jake Fisher, we still have all these, we still have Chris Haynes, we still have a bunch of these guys. Like, what do you mean? But I think you're right, because the difference between Woj and everybody else is that when Woj tweeted it, it had happened. It's done. It's as good as done if it's not done already. And you can't say that and I mean no disrespect to anybody else because they put a lot of work into this, but you can't say that for everybody else in the news breaking business in the NBA. There's still, even when Shams tweets, there's still a little bit of what else is going on here, or are we sure that this is how it's going to happen? When Woj tweets it, it's done. He was a tool for the NBA, from front offices, from just the NBA's marketing agent arm, right? He was an avatar for the biggest thing in the NBA, which is what? It's not the games. It's not who wins a championship. It's the transactions. The transactions in the NBA are the biggest story. It's the biggest thing that drives it. It is what turns the NBA from a sport to a soap opera. It gives it 365-day viability is the transaction part. And Adrian Wojnarowski was the avatar for the transactions. It's not enough just for the transactions to happen. You have to have a single entity walking you through it. The Woj bomb was the most exciting thing. The Woj bomb was more exciting than a Steph Curry three-pointer in the fourth quarter. It was.
Well, it
was. It was flatly was.
It's certain kinds of the year. I think I don't think all the time, but I think.
Name the time it's not. I mean, after the trade deadline, you can't have them. And in the playoffs, you can't really have them.
It's the trade deadline in July. It's like you're just inject Woj bombs into my veins. It was like
it was the most exciting thing in the sport. And now we don't have that. And people could say, well, why do you need it? Because I kind of facetiously said before, his job was tweeting things 30 minutes or 30 seconds before the PR release, the press release came out. But it's why McDonald's has Ronald McDonald. You need a face. You need a person. You need an embodiment associated with the thing. And that was Adrian Wojnarowski. And now the NBA and ESPN and its major partners, now NBC, Amazon, all these, they need to manufacture a new one. And it's not as easy, because I've also seen this, Chris. It's like, oh, who's Woj going to give all his sources to? It ain't that easy, man. Sources aren't transferable in that way. It doesn't work like pancakes.
It's a relationship business. It is a relationship.
So there's going to be a rush. Business. It's going to be a rush of people trying to fill that void, and it's going to be cutthroat and bloody, and people are going to be stepping on each other to try to fill that Adrian Wojnarowski void because it's huge.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say about this too is the other thing about Woj in his ESPN era that I think I will miss, and not all I can't listen to all the time. It wasn't top of my rotation, but when he would get NBA decision makers on his pod to talk for 30 minutes. Or like a play.
I forgot about I didn't even think about his podcast. I haven't listened to that podcast in years.
Right. It's only something if because you don't get these GMs or president of basketball operations anymore, doing interviews like that. It's very rare when Kevin O'Connor, then at the Ringer, now at Yahoo, got Calvin Booth on the record for the Ringer, and Kobe Altman, for Sinclair doesn't do a ton. The Heat guys don't do a ton of interviews. The Knicks famous. You don't get interviews or insight into these guys ever so often, even if it was in this sort of gilded, very comfortable setting where you didn't.
Unless you're a Warriors, unless you cover the Warriors, those guys talk to everybody.
Yeah, certain teams do. You don't get Lakers. The insight. Yeah, the Lakers. There's a reason the Warriors have everyone's favorite PR staff. If you talk to NBA media people, it's everyone's the Warriors PR staff is my favorite PR staff.
Ray Ritter
the same
is
ones
the
that
GOAT.
You don't like.
Yep.
The ones that they don't like are also pretty much universal. It's not a secret.
So I took you off your Woj pod.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
It's okay. But I will not miss that show. I'm not saying Bobby Marks will still be on Zach's podcast, Zach Lowe's podcast, I'm sure, and whatnot on ESPN still, I'm sure. But Woj randomly just dropping hey, I have 30 minutes with this team that just made a trade into your feed was a nice resource to have. Mm-hmm. In a world where you don't get those interviews very often. And I wonder if those go away, or I wonder if he'll, if the local beat guys then get some of the power back within the structure and, and
yeah, it doesn't, that's the thing. No, you already hit it before. Everything has changed forever. It's going to just be different. There's no point for the front office to talk to the local beat guy about this stuff. They want it at ESPN. They want it at a league partner. They want the national part of it. They want the recognition part of it. You'll still get it.
The recognition part, I think you're hitting more than anything else, which I think this is the point. Yeah. But that's my own take on PR. That's my own take on comms and PR. That I think they're missing.
No, but and even these front office guys, they want the credit, right? You have to have a certain amount of ego to say I'm the one to lead this franchise. I don't even mean that in a derogatory way. That's what it takes. So you want the credit when you do something good, and when you pull off a trade that you think is a major win, you want to talk about it, especially if it was hard. So that's totally fine. The people that want to talk about it will always find a place to talk about it. It'll probably stay at a national platform. It will be interesting because ESPN reportedly got this news only hours before we all got this news. Woj walked into the office and said, "This is my decision. I'm going to turn down $7 million a year for the next 2 or 3 years, and I'm going to go lead St. Bonaventure." And then the ESPN folks were like, "What? St. Bona who? What? What are you talking about?" And then he informed them on their decision. So they are. I would imagine they had a very robust plan on how to utilize Adrian Wojnarowski on NBA Today and whatever other platforms this season. the NBA season is less than a month away. Who are they going to fill that void with, right? It's going to be a little tough. And there's something to be said about like on ESPN when you tune into NBA Today or you're on like NBA Countdown or whatever they have at night, and you just see Adrian Wojnarowski on the panel with his phone out, and you're like, if anything happens, this guy's going to break it. It gives that broadcast weight. It gives that broadcast an air of like almost like something that you don't expect. It gives it something intriguing, and they don't have that without Adrian Wojnarowski. Now, maybe if you could put Brian Windhorst on there or Zach Lowe, and you can lean more into their insider stuff and not necessarily their analysis stuff. But I do suspect that they're probably going to hire somebody here pretty soon to try to fill that Woj void with.
Wes, trivia question and the second, and we'll get on to our role guys. Do you know what move was Woj's last Woj bomb? You want a hint?
Was it the Okoro extension?
It was Isaac Okoro extension was his last breaking news Woj bomb.
Isaac Okoro, man. And didn't he tweet
something?
He tweeted
about it. He did. The Cavs have run with it, which was telling. But it.
Do we have yet on Basketball Reference where they list the nicknames the last Woj bomb as Isaac Okoro's nickname?
I hope they market it forever, if I'm being honest. But he tweeted last Woj bomb, and then like the emoji of the guy like crossing his arm like this, I think, and then hashtag let him know the Cavs like branding hashtag, and I was like, good stuff.
Yep.
But just what a real deep cut way to go out. It's not like you gotta like it wasn't like he ended on the Bobby Hurley thing. It was like I ended on Isaac Okoro. No disrespect.
Well,
to
do you think the Bobby Hurley thing played anything into his decision? The way that he kind of, depending on what you read and what you hear. I know Ethan Strauss with his newsletter has talked a lot about this, written a lot about this rather, about how that just didn't play out the way that Woj anticipated it playing out. I would be interested to know, and I probably will never know, but I would be interested to know if so, how much that weighed into his decision. Did that whole sort of story kind of just break him almost?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible that just set him over the edge.
Yeah,
it was just the blowback for this. Like I can just go back and do something that no one's really.
Or not necessarily in the blowback, but just sort of the sobering reality of his waning powers. At 55 years old or however, I think he's 55. Like, is he just like, what I want to do? Because again, depending on what you read, what you believe, whatever, he was trying to exert some amount of control over the Lakers by getting Hurley thrust into that conversation when it had seemed like they had already made their decision on JJ Redick. And there was obviously Hurley not going to the Lakers, kind of using that leverage to get the contract extension that he wanted. And I do wonder if Woj saw that and was just like, I really just want to be in control. I don't want to be reporting on what teams do. I want to be doing it. And now he's doing that with St. Bonaventure. And I, who's to say that this is his last job, right? Like there's this idea that he's retiring. The guy's not retiring. He's still gonna be working like crazy, but who's to say that Adrian Wojnarowski isn't just doing this, prepping himself for a bigger job down the road, right? Adrian Wojnarowski was just so fed up with reporting on the powers that be, where now he just wants to be the power. And I don't know. It's total speculation right now, but I just have a hard time seeing Wojnarowski just going away and just doing the St. Bonaventure thing, and that's the end of the Adrian Wojnarowski era.
Yeah. Curious to see what the local the Bonaventure beat guy is trying to.
Right, trying to source Woj, just being like, Woj is like, let me teach you how this is done, young fella. Like,
yeah.
Because I don't know. I don't know anything about St. Bonaventure, but I would imagine that that's probably like the first beat that a young kid gets out of journalism school.
Or like the college kids being like showing up hungover to basketball practice, and they just see Woj just like sipping a cup of coffee, watching practice.
What a score for journalism kids at St. Bonaventure College. That's great for them. All you got to do is trying to offer
Woj
be the
like
next Shams.
Yeah, they're probably going to try to offer Woj like a 6 milligram like mid-Zin pouch and be like, hey, Woj, what's going on behind the scenes? Trying to buddy up with him, and he's just like looking at him like, what the fuck you doing? It's absolutely where we're headed. Woj, you wanna go to the bar later? And he's like, no, I'm gonna go home and drink like a nice bottle of wine because I've made millions of dollars. It's gonna happen. All right, role players. We're gonna get into the role players that are gonna define the 2024-25 season. Obviously, in the NBA, the stars-driven league, it's the best teams. The stars drive everything, but the role guys are so important for teams hitting their ceiling or even maintaining a floor is the way that I would look at it, Wes. And we've each got 3 prepped. I'll go first. Mike Conley is my first one. This guy is still just insanely important for the Minnesota Timberwolves. You could make an argument like, okay, what is up with Gobert going into the season if you want to peg him in that role player category? But I just tend to think Gobert might have been a little banged up at the Olympics, and he's probably going to be fine, even if there's some playoff issues. You can never really get by with him. Mike Conley's about to be 37 years old when the season starts, and if he misses 20 games, Wes, they don't have it then becomes all on Ant to handle all of the ball handling, all of the shepherding. Rob Dillingham might be good eventually. I think year one guard stuff is just really hard. It just becomes perpetually really difficult. They don't have a really replacement in house for him unless they just figure something else out entirely and revamp the system on the fly. But that's really hard to do. And I look at this roster and I look at what Mike Conley does for them and how important he is. And if he gets hurt in any stretch of imagination or takes a dip from last year in any big way, I think this team's chances of being one of the title contenders out west just takes a huge dip. He is vital to everything Minnesota needs to do this year.
I mean, just look at how everything changed for that team when they swapped Russell out for Mike Conley. And the entire dynamic of the team changed. I mean, just look at that right there, and you'll understand how important Mike Conley is to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The interesting thing about Conley, though, is that his contract flipped this year where he was making $20+ million the last couple of years, and now he's under contract for $7 or $8 or $9 million. It was like less than $10 million. So he's on a bargain deal. That said, he's still immensely important to this team. There's a reason why they drafted Dillingham is because they're trying to groom the next version of the next point guard for the Timberwolves, and I think they see value in Anthony Edwards not always being on the ball, but Mike Conley's ability to be on the ball, not only shoot threes at a high level, defend at a decent enough level even at this age, but also just sort of captain the ship, point guys in the right direction, be in charge of running an offense, which is left to like lesser point guards could be very clunky, right? As it was with D'Angelo Russell. You've got Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns just sort of running into each other with a lesser point guard kind of holding the reins there. So it's really important, and as he declines, it's going to be more and more important that Anthony Edwards gets better at running that offense, but also Rob Dillingham sort of being shepherded through this early process of his career. Great spot for Dillingham to be in, by the way. But you're absolutely spot on about Mike Conley. He's one of the most important role players in the league. If I could put one other Minnesota Timberwolf player in there, I would put Jaden McDaniels. I just think that his turn from kind of like interesting defensive tool to high-level role player who can make threes and do some stuff on offense might have been the single most important factor outside of Anthony Edwards in Minnesota getting to the Western Conference Finals last year. His continued improvement is going to be huge, but it just feels like we already know what he is, whereas Mike Conley, you're right, like how much more can you wring out of the Mike Conley sponge is the biggest question for Minnesota, because the Timberwolves had an awesome season. They've got Anthony Edwards, who might be the next face of the NBA. Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert. There's so much to like. Chris Finch is the head coach. Like, there's so much to like about that team. But it does feel like it feels like we have more questions about them than we should for a team in their position. Mike Conley is one of those questions. How much longer can he play at a high role player level?
And you would think that the cliff might have already come, considering his age. Being a 6-foot guard who's been as good and vital for teams as long as he has, in Memphis, obviously at his peak, Utah, now Minnesota, it's hard to sustain this level of play this late into his career. It just is. And I still look at him as, it's not, he's 80%, 75% of what he was at his peak in Memphis. He's not quite the defensive pest anymore, but he's still solid as hell in that, and he's smart as all. He makes all the right decisions, can still hit a shot kind of when you feel like you need him to. And he's just the ultimate keep the train on the tracks guy that we have in the league right now. I think it's like him and Chris Paul are like the two best versions of that guard that doesn't exist really anymore. Like that kind of point guard is rarer and rarer in this NBA, I think. This more traditional kind of ball moving tempo setting point guard. And if he goes in it, like in some ways it might be good for Ant to have to like experience life without that. But it's such an important thing for Ant to not get overburdened and on a team that has like some cramped spacing, has a kind of a clunky offense at times that can just struggle to score even at its best moments just because of the personnel and the way they've built big first. Like Conley just makes so much of the things that work there possible, and you remove him out of that. It would be a lot on Chris Finch to design something new.
Yeah, and they don't have the guy, right? Like Dillingham's not ready, Anthony Edwards not ready to be that guy. So if Mike Conley isn't that guy, they're kind of screwed this year at least, and they'd have to start planning for the future. Just really quick, last Mike Conley point. Joakim Noah was in his draft.
Yeah.
That seems like the 90s,
him and Al
right?
Horford.
Like that seems like forever ago.
Yeah.
So it was Al Horford, Kevin Durant, Greg Oden. Like that was that draft. Jeff Green was also in that draft. Great draft for longevity, by the way, between Durant, Conley, Jeff Green, Al Horford. But Joakim Noah was in that draft. That's how long ago that was.
The top 5 in itself is hilarious because it's like Oden goes 1, and obviously his career just cut short by injuries in a major way. But then Durant, Horford, Conley, and Jeff Green all still kicking.
Awesome top 5.
It's like
except for Oden.
what a top 5. Thad
all
Young's
right,
still,
my turn.
I think technically around. Yeah, let's go.
I'm going with Denver's Christian Braun. So with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope leaving in free agency, Christian Braun is the presumptive starting shooting guard now in Denver. My question is, what percentage of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope does Christian Braun need to be for the Nuggets to get back to the finals? Because there's going to be a lot put on Brown's plate right away. And the KCP fit was so good. It was so perfect with everything else they did. The best starting 5 in the league until the Boston Celtics did what they did last year for years. Like this, Christian Braun's best case scenario is just doing what KCP did. Like you could make the argument that, Christian Braun's his own basketball player. He needs to do whatever Christian Braun wants to do. I would say, no. Just do your best impression of KCP. And I think that's in part what they looked at. Like they have a similar body type. Both of them are longer kind of players, feisty, fight around screens. The difference is that Christian Braun, not a high volume 3-point shooter, certainly not as high as KCP was. Brown's a 37% career 3-point shooter through 2 years. KCP was basically a 40% 3-point shooter. KCP took more than 50% of his shot attempts from beyond the arc. Christian Braun takes a little bit more than a third of his attempts from beyond the arc. So not only does he just have to get better as a basketball player in his third NBA season, he also needs to maybe dramatically shift his game into basically being a volume 3-point shooter. And that's a big question mark. I don't think you can assume that from anybody. I thought Christian Braun was awesome in the 2023 NBA Finals. I thought he had moments in his second year. They need him to be good. Because if he's... I'll ask the question to you, Chris. Like, what percentage does he have to be of KCP for you to feel like picking the Nuggets as a finals team is a viable pick?
It's got to be like 80%, right?
That's what I'm like minimum. Yeah.
Minimum. And I think getting him up to that level is hard to imagine because I think KCP the last couple of years from the Lakers in here was like one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, like all defense caliber. There's a reason he got what he got in free agency. Brown has the upside to be. He has the size. He has like the frame. He has the athleticism. He has like the tools, but it hasn't fully come together in that way yet. And he just has to, I think, let things fly a little. If you look at his frequency, he's like 31% of his shots are from 3. That has to just go up.
Yeah.
He takes a ton of shots at the rim, which is good. Doesn't take a ton of mid-range, about average for his position, which is fine. Short mid, he likes to drive, get in, cut. But he needs to just, like, more threes. And even if it was corner threes, 11% of his shots from the corner. The Nuggets need
I would say even though, like, KCP, more than half of his shots were from 3-point range, and a lot of them were from above the break, and that stuff is really important. Also, KCP kind of quietly ran some pick and roll with Nikola Jokic. Yeah. We always sort of assume, associate Jamal Murray, which obviously he does it the most. But KCP developed some on-ball pick and roll stuff and some real chemistry with Jokic, and Christian Braun's going to have to hammer that out too. So, it's going to be on him to take that leap because even like a guy like Julian Strawther and some Peyton Watson, like Strawther's a nothing on defense, and he's a little too skinny to be a starter at that level. Peyton Watson is a nothing on offense, even though there's some stuff I like defensively, but he's just still so raw. it's kind of on Braun to be that guy. And it's on the other, like those other guys got to be better to be bench pieces, but it's kind of on Braun to be that guy. Or else the Nuggets could run into a situation where they're like, they throw their hands up and they just start Russell Westbrook, which would be an absolute disaster. So I think that's enough on Christian Braun. Your pick is up next.
I will just say the last thing I'll say is just he's the known of those guys, and maybe one of these other guys does step up, but he's the one I think when we look at that roster, he's the most known one we have, and you would think is the most likely to step forward. All right, let's go to my next one is OG Aunonoby, New York Knicks. Tom Thibodeau this week gave an interview at NBA.com where he opened the door to playing some Randall at the 5 more than I think we've thought of him thinking about it in the past. I still think they're a team that might be in the market for a center at some point. I don't know where that player is coming from exactly. I think the center market is not as good as people might think it would be in this era of you can pay centers really cheap. Like the good ones are still getting paid enough where it makes it kind of hard to trade for them in spots. But I think if this Randall thing at the 5 happens anyway, or they play small at all this year, OG's kind of got to be the back end of it. He's taller than Julius Randle. He's a little stronger, I think, in some ways, and has a more proven track record of just defending inside the paint and being that uber versatile piece. I thought about Mikal Bridges here, Wes, but when I think about like the needs of the Knicks and what they're going to need out of these guys, like I think Bridges is pretty much 1, 2, 3 defending in those spots. Anunoby's going to need to be the bruiser, the guy that absorbs some punishment, and he's a guy with injury concerns, and they're going to need him to be healthy all year, live up to this contract, and I think be the piece that unlocks a lot of their versatility. It's a lot on OG this year to maximize this Knicks roster and to be the best version of himself, the most versatile version of himself. The Knicks are going to be the best version of themselves if OG is the best version of himself.
When OG was playing last year, I mean, how many the New York beat guys just tweeting every advanced stat imaginable about how awesome the Knicks were when OG Anunoby was playing last year.
Yeah.
I think they had like a defensive rating of 101 point something when Anunoby was on the court, which is just bananas. Like that's insane. The question is how often he's on the court. He played 50 games last year, 67 the year before that, 48 the year before that, 43 the year before that. If they could get 67 games from OG, that feels like a best case scenario, because the question with him isn't if he gets hurt, it's when and for how many games, right? Like this elbow thing is an issue with him. And so, but you're absolutely right. I think I don't remember if we were kind of defined what we're looking at here. This is not a ranking of the best role players in the NBA. It's just sort of the ones who, if they hit this year, that makes material difference into the way we think about who can contend for a championship. And it's why we have Mike Conley. It's why we talked about Christian Braun. If those guys hit, it just changes the ceiling for their teams. OG Anunoby is right there. We know what he is when he's on the court. The question is he on the court? That's the question going into every game. And then for how long? Because it's really good right now, and can it be for the playoffs? And so that's the biggest thing with him. Yes, Tibbs has already talked about OG possibly playing center. That's going to be big for them. But also beyond that, there's not much depth there at center. It's Mitchell Robinson, who's also very similar in terms of like how many games is this guy going to play. Behind him, it's Precious Achiuwa, who is more of a power forward size, being forced to play center. They might experiment with Julius Randle at center, and even if they do that, Julius Randle, not exactly known as a rim protector. So their rim protection is going to come from the perimeter, right? It's going to come from OG, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, these hard MFers, just flattening out every pick and roll and just making it so that you don't get to the rim. So our protection at the rim is less important because we're not even going to let you get there. But you take one of those pieces away in OG, and now you start springing leaks. And now it's a lot easier for your opponent to get to the rim. And now your rim protection is revealed, and now you're a little bit more vulnerable. Your lack of rim protection, rather, and now you're a lot more vulnerable. So it's a great call out, OG Anunoby. The Knicks, if all this stuff works, they could definitely compete for a championship. But if the wheels start falling off like they did in the playoffs last year, where they were down to like the bare minimum of roster guys, they got no chance. And unfortunately, they're built around a lot of guys who tend to be pretty injury prone.
Yeah, 100%. Who's your next one?
Speaking of injury prone.
Oh, boy.
I'm going Khris Middleton here.
I want to say, I'm going to reveal my long list for a second. I thought about Middleton, but I felt like calling him a role player was a little bit rude. The other long name on my list that I didn't get to because I thought calling him a role player was perhaps a little bit tough on him, but he's not part of the big three in my mind, is Bradley Beal.
Okay, wait. All right.
Do you have Bradley Beal on your list?
Put a pin in that. That's my third guy.
Let's go! Look at us, Wes. We're cooking.
I do want to just say I had Isaiah Hartenstein on my list, and he just qualified as like too solid for me. I'm like, no, I know exactly what that guy's going to give me.
I
He's
think
not
we've
like a
also
swing piece.
talked
He's
too
awesome.
much about Isaiah Hartenstein.
That's a great point also.
Or-
So
We've
Isaiah
already-
Hartenstein, for listeners, if you're a Thunder fan, you have a problem with him not being on the list, go back to any of our podcasts. We talk enough about him. So he's on the list, but we're skipping him. Khris Middleton is on my list. Is he an all-star right now?
No, absolutely.
So then he's a role player, right?
Yeah, okay. Valid.
So that's
Valid.
kind of what I was at. He hasn't been an all-star since 2022. He averaged 15 points per game last year, but on good efficiency, like some of his best efficiency numbers in years. The problem is that both of his ankles are made of glass now, and they're constantly going under surgery. So they played 6 playoff games. Middleton averaged 25 points per game in the playoffs. There is stuff there that you like. Again, the efficiency numbers off the charts for him last year. He is picking his spots a lot more. But there's no doubt he's important. And I would say this, Chris. I think Khris Middleton is probably the most important role player in the entire Eastern Conference this year. If he
I
is
like this
good
take.
and available, that makes the Bucks title contenders. If he's not, then the Bucks aren't title contenders. As good as Giannis is and as good as Damian Lillard is, and as many games as they may win in the regular season under Doc Rivers, and as much as I like the additions of Gary Trent, Taurean Prince, DeLon Wright, and I like them a lot, they need Khris Middleton to be back to what he was, and more importantly, back on the floor. 88 games combined the last 2 seasons. Not enough. They probably need like 60 to 70. They probably need him to just be healthy, 60 games in the regular season, but more importantly than anything, just healthy in the playoffs. If that's true, then I'm buying stock in the Bucks as legitimate contenders in the Eastern Conference. And if not, just eliminate them.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, everything you're saying about the other role guys, I think it's a good way of thinking about them because I like DeLon Wright. I like Taurean Prince in a vacuum. I in theory, I like a lot of the minimum signings they made. Taurean Prince could have the best season of his life, and it's not going to mean shit if Khris Middleton plays 40 games and it looks like a shell of himself. Like Khris Middleton's shot creation, at times his size on the perimeter, his ability to relieve pressure off of Giannis I think prevents a lot of stuff being thrown in Dame's way in terms of doubles and traps and just everything you could throw at Dame at the top. If Middleton is there as a release valve, even and a functional one, Miami the Bucks offense is going to function in a way that it can't. If Middleton's not there, it's like you could run as many Giannis Dame pick and rolls as you want. They're going to be okay with that outcome considering the lack of threats elsewhere. You need that other off the bounce guy.
Eric Neem from The Athletic wrote about this the other day, and I thought he did a really nice job kind of putting some film in the piece. But it's not as simple as just saying Damian Lillard, Giannis, two-man game is unstoppable, right? Because like you were just talking about, Chris, like you can come over the screen and trap Dame, and then he has to take a couple of dribbles in order to get it back to Giannis because he doesn't have the height that a Khris Middleton does, where that Khris Middleton-Giannis pick and roll was deadly for you. It helped them win a championship a few years ago, right? It was absolutely deadly because Middleton can just throw it over the top. And so that's what you need is when Giannis is rolling, you got to get it to him quick before that low man defender, before that backside help side defense can come over and help and rotate and build a wall. You got to get it to him quick, so there's only a guy, maybe a guy and a half in between him and the basket, because then it's just breakfast, man. Then it's just Giannis going to the bowl for some cereal, and so they had a harder time doing that. Now, if you have Middleton as that release valve, that kind of helps you create that triangle offense. It gives you that other angle to get it to Giannis, or it just makes sure that you can't trap Dame because Khris Middleton's right there, and you can't just leave him open. And the other part of this, too, is that you could keep running that Khris Middleton-Giannis pick and roll, and now you've got to pay all of your attention to that. You've got to bring at least one guy over, and if that guy comes over from Damian Lillard, then you can just pass it out to Damian Lillard, who's a knockdown three-point shooter with his quick release and all these things. So, yeah, Middleton is just the part that makes it all work. Dame and Giannis together, for the record, works. It works at a very high level. It does not work on its own at winning a championship level. That's the Middleton part. That's the difference. That's the thing. That's the je ne sais quoi. That's that thing that gets them over the top into the championship conversation and away from just being like a 48-win team.
Yeah. Middleton, if he's cooked, and look, I think it's possible he's cooked.
Sure, absolutely. Ankles made of glass.
Like if you just think about his last couple of years, the fact that he's 33, like those are all things working against Middleton. It's one of the real risks of the Bucks in general. This is one of the oldest cores, probably the oldest core of any of the best teams in the league. Middleton, Dame, and Brook is all on the wrong side of the age curve.
Giannis is 30,
a ton
man.
of risk. Yeah, Giannis is 30. It's tough. Are you positive about Middleton coming into this year?
Yeah, I think so. I just like sometimes, like you're like, could it get worse? You know, you just sort of ask yourself. You know, it's like, I mean, technically it could get worse. Like you could have a career-ending injury or a season-ending injury or something like that. I don't think anybody anticipates that. But there are questions about how his ankles are going to hold up. I am relatively positive. Also, some of the vibes coming out of Milwaukee around Khris Middleton are more positive, and so people on the ground seem a little bit more positive. I don't know if that's just hometown bias or whatever, but yes, I'm positive. Also, I might just be projecting because I want Middleton to be okay. But if he's not, then the Bucks have a lot of questions, right? Like the Bucks have to go into a whole thing of how do we get younger? To your point, Chris, like all these guys are over 30. Giannis is locked up under contract, but he can always ask out, and then we're sort of in the same situation Portland was with Damian Lillard. But you also don't want to get too young because you don't want to do what Portland did around Damian Lillard and just be like we're rebuilding. But I think so it's a tough needle to thread in terms of we got to get younger so that like the next few years of Giannis's contract, like he could still be in a championship team, but we don't want to go so young that it looks like we're rebuilding. That's tough.
Agreed. All right, let's go to my last one.
Okay.
PJ Washington.
Okay, interesting. That's your Dallas Maverick.
Here.
All right.
Thought about Klay Thompson here, but we've talked about Klay enough where I felt like I
wasn't even the Dallas Maverick I was thinking about.
So I think the fun thing about Dallas is that there's like a bunch of guys you could pick. You could have picked Najee. I thought about Najee Marshall. Was kind of the other one.
No, not the guy I was thinking about.
Who was the one you were thinking of?
Derek Lively.
Jaden Hardy. Oh
Derek Lively. Jaden Hardy.
I just here's what I would say. I am so confident that Derek Lively is going to be fucking awesome this year that I don't think of him as like I'm worried. Like I framed these as sort of was like I'm a little bit skeptical of these things breaking correctly.
I understand, and that's totally fair. My thing is with Derek Lively. I'm with you. I'm a big Lively fan. Does he take that leap to all defensive team level, which I think he's going to get to at some point? Does he take that now? Is he like ready to do that right away? Because if he is, and with all of the questions about Dallas's defense, especially with the addition of Klay Thompson, is he going to start? You're losing Derrick Jones Jr. What can Najee Marshall give you? All these things. All of that goes away if Derek Lively is one of the best 5 defensive centers in the NBA. It just goes away. And I don't know that he's going to make that leap this season. I'm confident that the leap will happen. I just don't know it's going to happen this season. That said, not my pick, your pick. You pick PJ Washington. Go for it.
PJ first playoffs last year with Dallas. I think he'll probably be more settled this year with half a season playing with Luka and all that stuff. But I just want to point out that he had one playoff series where he shot well from 3.
Yep.
31.3% in round 1, 46.9 in round 2, 25 in the Western Conference Finals, and 27.3% in the NBA Finals. Klay Thompson, in theory, does alleviate some of those concerns. I do also think Najee Marshall, even if I don't know if he's exactly the Mavs were able to really leverage Derrick Jones Jr. in a way no other team was able to before and kind of make his weirdness work. Marshall feels a little bit more traditional to me in what they're going to ask of him, and maybe there's a net benefit to that. I'm willing to see that out. But PJ Washington is a guy that is going to be key for them when they want to play him at the 4, play him at the 3 and defend certain guys. If they want to go small and go no other centers, he's kind of the successor to me to the Kleba minutes in a lot of ways, a younger, kind of better version of that in theory. But it only works if he shoots well. And this is a guy that had one super hot playoff run, and for his career is not someone we think of as like a great shooter. 35.4% for his career, but that is really buoyed by some great early season numbers, and it's kind of regressed every year since like year 3.
Yep.
So does he get better this year? Does it actually be functional is a big question to me about what he's going to be for them.
Yeah, if people want the stats here, I mean, 37%, 38%, 36%, 35%, 32%, 32%, 31%. So he has gotten worse. The volume has ticked up, but not by a ton. We're talking about like half a 3-pointer to one 3-pointer every year over year, right? Like that he's improving. He went from 4 3-point attempts a game as a rookie. Now he's at 5.8, so almost 6. But it's marginal increases to that. And with the marginal increases, you would think at that rate that the efficiency should stay. Right? That's the idea. You're not asking him to go from 4 to 8 or 4 to 6 like overnight, one season to the other. Like, it should have been gradual here. The other big thing with PJ Washington, when you talk about his shooting, is he's not good from the corners. He's actually worse. He's a 35.2% career 3-point shooter, and we just went through the numbers. He's worse. He's a 35% shooter from the corner over his career, but last year in Dallas, 24% from the corners. And that was every 3-point shot they gave him, it seems like, was in the corner. Like no team relied more on corner threes last year than the Dallas Mavericks. They had the highest rate of 3-point shots from the corner came from Dallas. They need guys to hit that shot. Derrick Jones Jr. did it at a high level. I think Najee Marshall will be fine. I do have questions about whether or not PJ Washington can, because he didn't. Like you said, in one playoff series, and in the finals, he couldn't make a corner 3 to save his life. So, yeah, it's a great call out. PJ Washington is definitely a swing factor. If he can be, it feels like he needs to be better than what he was, even despite the Klay Thompson addition, another year of Derek Lively, full year of Daniel Gafford. They added Spencer Dinwiddie, which I thought was a quiet, good move by Dallas this summer. But they need Washington to be good because they traded a lot for him.
And he again, I think, is a successor to Kleba. I think he fits with Luka, but it only makes sense if he's actually shooting well. And even
is he 3 and D or is he just D? Right?
Is he 3 and D and kind of from 3?
Right, and then you're not 3 and D.
Then you're not 3 and D. Teams will ignore him in the playoffs and
just D. Just the D. Then you're just the D.
Just the D. Bringing it fully back to referencing the shirts you suggested that I buy.
For my next pick, I'm going Bradley Beal.
Okay.
I'm going Bradley
I love
Beal.
This.
Yeah, you almost ruined it. It's okay.
I think it makes good for us. It makes good that we just I feel like, Wes, the more I've known you for a long time now, but the longer we've done the show together, I think I know where you're going. And I had a sneaking suspicion as making this list is you're going to put at least one guy that was an all-star at some point on your list and Bradley Beal is the perfect example of this. So
this is how you podcast, Chris. This is how we do it. Get mad at me. That's the point. That's why I put you here. Yeah. Peek behind the curtain, folks. Any attention is good attention here. Who was the last person to make an all-star game? Khris Middleton or Bradley Beal?
Oh my God! I'm gonna say Beal. Is it Beal?
You think he made one more recently than Middleton?
Middleton's just been hurt since they won the title, and I feel like Beal might have got one. They sneak one in there.
Middleton's last All-Star game was 2022. Bradley Beal's last All-Star game, 2021. Okay, it's been a minute.
Yeah,
it's been a minute.
In NBA life, 4 years without an All-Star game is like an eternity.
Especially after 30 years old, right? I mean, that's literally the difference of being in your prime to not sometimes, So he's the 5th highest paid player in the league at $50 million. He's not going to be worth that. Role players aren't worth $50 million. That said, he's got to be better, right? You got to start making good on some of that money here. You got to be worth at least $25 million. And I don't think you could argue that he was last year. Look, his counting stats were down. His advanced stats, whatever you can go, counting stats, you can go advanced metrics, however way you slice it, they were all role player level. Bradley Beal at this point of his career, he's a role player. That's okay. You need high-level role players to win a championship. That team's built around Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Bradley Beal's got to find his way to fit in, not fit out, as one LeBron James might say.
Shut up.
His numbers were closer to Kobe White than they were Devin Booker, right? So that's what we're talking about here. Games played over the last few years, 53, 50, 40, 60, 57. A big part of this is just being on the court. That's also a big reason why he's not been an all-star since 2021. He's got to be on the court, number one. But to me, the whole idea of experimenting with Bradley Beal as a point guard, it just felt like Frank Vogel was trying to figure out a way to get Bradley Beal to be useful last year. And if he's just... Can he become better Grayson Allen? Because if he's that, that's a useful player for the Phoenix Suns as long as Tyus Jones is running the offense, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant are playing like superstars, and you get maybe some better minutes out of Nikola or Yusuf Nurkic and these other guys. But Beal's got to be a high-level role player, and the expectations of $50 million and his all-star past have to just go away.
They also just can't. There's no way around their season working without him being good. Like this, the Suns are only gonna be as good as they can be if Bradley Beal is good.
Yep.
They can't trade him. Nope. He still has no trade clause, and B, he's making an exorbitant amount of money for the next couple of years in a way that his contract just wouldn't really be tradable even if he didn't have a no trade clause. $50 million this year, 53.6 the year after, and 57.1, which is a player option in the last year. Telling you now, he's picking up the player option.
He has to be worth half of that.
He has to be like an above mid. He probably was this last year to some degree, even with kind of the fits and starts.
The availability was the hard. Like his efficiency was really good last year.
43% from three last year on good volume is
over 50% overall too shooting. But
if you want to tell a good story about Bradley Beal in this year and his fit, like him being a third option scorer type, the numbers paint a pretty interesting picture.
If he could, like I said, just be better Grayson Allen, catch and shoot, compete hard on defense. Bradley Beal can do it. We've seen him do it. He can do it. And if you're not asking him to create off the dribble and be the pseudo point guard and stuff, like he should have the energy to do all that stuff also, especially on the defensive end. So just let him be an efficient shooter on offense, ask more of him defensively, and I think you can kind of see like this new version of Bradley Beal, like an evolved sort of, into his 30s Bradley Beal. Let him age gracefully. But that's the big question there. It's almost like less insulting. Like this is me not trying to insult Bradley Beal necessarily, but more me just asking, don't worry about being an all-star. Just be a great role player. Star in your role, right? That whole coach speak stuff, that's really what he needs to do.
A lot on Mike Budenholzer this year, huh?
And by the way, I think he can figure it out. I think he'll get them to buy in. He's good at getting players to buy into a system. That's sort of his thing.
I would like for the Phoenix Suns to be more compelling than they've been of late. And it would make for an interesting story to see if they can figure this out. Really
don't tell Brendan this, but I'm actually a little bit higher on the Suns than consensus.
We'll scrub that. We'll scrub that out. We'll make sure he doesn't know. How many orders of those weird chips that Brendan told us about do you think Bradley Beal could buy with this contract?
Oh, the noogles or whatever he talked about, the doodles, whatever they were. A lot.
Too many. Too many for human consumption, I think is the answer.
Yeah, you could probably buy that on a minimum contract, but yeah.
That's also true. All right, Wes, let's end it there. A lot of role guys we didn't get to. I think some we'll get to in our season preview and when we get to some of the teams maybe outside of the upper echelon. But that's it for the Just Basketball show this week. Back with more next week. I'm Khris Manning. That's Wes Goldberg. Promo code Just Basketball. Bet MGM for that first bet offer match. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great